I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, a year ago, Mike Yenni was elected Jefferson Parish President with 52% of the vote. A year later, nearly 100% of the parish's elected officials are asking him to resign. We'll look tonight at the latest in the rise and fall of the former Kenner mayor. For the often embattled New Orleans Police Department, the numbers were much better as a new survey shows surprisingly strong public satisfaction. Our Future Watch segment looks at the latest in the effort to develop the former charity hospital. And with only a little more than 3 weeks before Election Day, we'll check on the Senate campaign and the politics of the embattled LSU-Florida game. Running with us are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Jeremy Alford, publisher, LaPolitics.com. Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter. And Curt Sprang, reporter, anchor, WGNO, Channel 26. Let's go on over to Errol right now and talk about the embattled Jefferson Parish President, Mike Yenni. More officials have called for him to step down. Poll results aren't really in his favor, but he says he's not going anywhere.
You know, for all the years that we've been doing this show, I don't know if referendums have ever been an issue. It's not it's an option that's out there. It's not one that has much of a chance of succeeding. It's purposely made to be difficult, and it probably should be difficult because you wouldn't want something that would be controlled by special interest groups. At any time a politician does something daring and courageous, some group says, "Oh, if you've offended me, we're going to put you out of office." And so you want it to be somewhat difficult. In Louisiana, where you need 1/3 of the registered voters just to sign a petition. Now, imagine we're talking about the registered voters, not the actual voters, because in the number of actual voters is fewer than registered, because some people may have moved away or died since then. So it's a big number to get. And in this case, in Jefferson Parish, it's where there's about 270,000 voters, so it'd be about 90,000 voters that would be needed on a petition.
And so this is a recall petition we're talking about.
That's a recall petition. And I suspect if it ever gets there, if you're a politician and there's a successful petition to get you out of office, you may as well just drop out at that point. I was asking Jeremy before the show, when he looked up if there was any example in Louisiana, if there ever been being a successful referendum, and you actually found one example.
Right, 2013, the mayor of Port Allen. Before that, who knows? It is an incredibly difficult process, and the clock is ticking on getting these signatures done. And I think the most fascinating thing politically is that just earlier this week, you had an actual field of candidates, of replacement candidates starting to form up. But now as we head into the weekend, everyone's kind of backing off and watching to see just how long Mike Yenni is going to dig in and make the remainder of this term very uncomfortable. And of course, we're talking about a sexting scandal here, and in case somebody was not aware of it, but according to a University of New Orleans poll of some Jefferson Parish voters, 90% of those polled were aware of this situation. But once again, Mike Yenni says he's going to stay put. He feels that he can still do his job.
It is a sexting scandal that at least partially he admitted to in a TV commercial. So you don't see people saying allegedly anymore. I mean, he did the TV commercial that he bought time and he talked to it. Why he doesn't resign? I mean, one, he might need the money. The other thing is that if there is going to be a criminal case, and so far there's no evidence that there will be, but if at some point that there is, his resigning from office could be a bargaining chip. I mean, that could be out there too, but at the same time, and so he's holding on to the office. What happens to an office? I've never seen a situation like this where you had a chief executive. I mean, there have been a lot of cases where you had unpopular chief executives, but none where there are polls showing 80% of the people.
Or where the chief executive is not allowed on school grounds in the parish. What if there's some reason that
he said that he would not go to public school.
Or not allowed in churches. So I've never seen, I mean, even Richard Nixon's worst days weren't like this. And there's still the machinery of government. There's still the machinery of the executive branch. The people who fix the streets and fix the roads and all of that can still maintain. And there's career civil servants who run that kind of thing, and so they're still there. What's going to be lost is that sort of like leadership the chief executive provides, rallying. There's some crucial tax issues that are coming up. It would be good to have the support. It would be good to have the chief executive out there campaigning. You could be losing initiative. Someone going out and setting ideas and new programs, or going out and trying to sell the parish for economic development. So you lose all that, other than just the day-to-day administration of it.
And so when he says he'll abide by the will of the people, with this referendum, it isn't too big of a statement because the referendum is such a tall mountain to climb.
That's right. If he was abiding, I guess it depends how you measure the will of the people. If he was abiding by the will of the people as you saw it today, he would, resign today. And a referendum, again, it reflects 1/3 of the registered voters, but 1/3 of the registered voters is probably a much higher percentage of the actual voters. But I think he knows it's difficult to obtain. But just as difficult it's going to be there for 4 years as parish president when nobody wants you there, and when you're very unpopular. This could be a very difficult thing to see. And at some point, you just think that psychologically, I mean, once he would leave there, at least people would stop looking at it every day. It wouldn't be the same kind of issue. And psychologically, he can move away from it and get on with his life in some other way.
I guess the question is why would he stay? And I would suspect there'll be some reporting soon on whether, in terms of his retirement, whether he's vested. He's been a government employee for a long time. And secondly, I think we have a political case study with David Vitter in that if you keep your head down and move forward and stay on message, that you can survive things like these. But there are two completely different incidents. You have a senator who got involved with this D.C. madam, and the political class asked him not to resign, whereas you got another guy with this Texan scandal where I think the entire political class is saying what's going on.
And as you said, that for a while there, folks were lining up to run for the office thinking that there would be a special election coming up soon, but we're not seeing that. So how many signatures would have to be gathered for this recall
It's
petition?
90,000, and it's not just signatures. These signatures are going to have to be reviewed. Mm-hmm. There's a review process. That's when presumably maybe Yenni's attorneys would come in and question some signatures. But the thought is that they can get close enough that he may resign on his own, trigger a special election on his own. And you think 90,000 signatures, but I'll tell you, in Baton Rouge, when there was that breakaway school district issue in recent years, they were setting up tiny little booths at drive-through windows at different businesses. You didn't even have to get out your car to sign this petition. And of course, they got very close. It was challenged in court. They ended up losing a court battle. So, I mean, it's, if this Metairie attorney who's heading this up can get some resources behind this push, in the battle of Mike Yenni's pride versus 90,000 signatures, the latter seems to have the edge right now, but it's not a complete impossibility.
That Metairie attorney is Robert Evans Jr., whose father for a long time was the president of Jefferson Parish Council and a very skilled politician himself. And so, in fact, his father was president of Jefferson Parish Council when Joe Yenni was parish president. And so that family is politically skilled and has a lot of contacts and knows the law and knows its way around. But the thing is, it's just, I'm sure there were 90,000 people who right now, if they could call in or something, would be in favor of his leaving. It's just getting those signatures. That's the hard part of it.
I remember mail-in. They were doing it by mail as well in Baton Rouge. I mean, there are all kind of different avenues.
Let me say one other thing. That probably, when a politician is unpopular, probably the most common reason is something having done with the law. If someone has done something illegal, but then you have the court system that settles that, and so if a person's indicted and convicted, then it's sort of automatic that he resigns this. And so here you have a situation where we don't know if this person has done anything illegal. He's done something that's very, very unpopular, and so you don't have the court system weighing in on this. And so that makes a big difference too. It really makes this unusual. So
if a recall is successful, then that leads to another election, correct?
Right. There's actual vote of the people on the issue.
All right. Well, we'll see how this develops. Thanks a lot, both of you. Let's go over to Curt right now and talking about from dissatisfaction with an elected official to increased satisfaction with a public agency, NOPD.
Right. The group, the New Orleans Crime Coalition, they do a survey at least once a year. In this case, they ask 600 people about their opinions with the New Orleans Police Department. And overall, the satisfaction rating was 64%. An overall satisfaction rating of 64%. And every district, every NOPD district, had higher numbers than it had had in the past. Last year, the number was 48%. So it's a significant jump. And even in the years when it was 48%, if you ask the people then, last year, what was going good, even that sounded kind of ominous. They said, well, they're doing the best with what they've got. And that was the affirmative people, Well, this year, the success rate, 70% say that the NOPD is doing a good job managing tensions, which is kind of a newer thing on the map. And about as many said that the culture is improving at the NOPD, which is something that the chief has been talking about, and frankly, chiefs before him as well. There have been 12 surveys since 2009. 64% this year is the highest it's ever been. And the superintendent was quick to jump out on this and comment on it. He says that the NOPD treats people with respect, that it is incorporating the best practices, it is following the consent decree, and he gives the credit to the officers. So, he says, his quote is, "We are delivering police services in the way they are supposed to be delivered. We're only going to get better." And so you say, well, okay, does this lead to safer people? Well, the city, in fact, thinks that it does. And you don't need to look any farther than the city's budget on page 220, if you're following with your budget at home. The NOPD, in the NOPD section, it says that satisfaction of community helps heighten performance. In other words, the officers will work harder if they know you're happy with them, right? And so the city says community confidence will lead to lower crime.
More interaction and more confidence and reliability in the police would get people in the community to cooperate more with police. So the consent decree seems to be then having some impact, because there are certain things that need to be done by the police department to satisfy that consent decree, and one of the major points in the consent decree is training. Is that something that's bringing about this more positive
the NOPD
reaction?
has expanded its training of the officers significantly for crisis situations and other things as well, all through the consent decree, and they've been very transparent about letting everybody know what they're doing to increase the training of officers. And of course, they've got the body cameras as well. And is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But it is a step in the right direction, and it's pretty clear the public likes what they're seeing.
And response times.
I also think Police Chief Harrison deserves some credit, too. I think he gives a good face, a good presence to the police department. He knows his business, but he has a good presence. I mean, he's from the West Bank. He's from the neighborhoods. He's there. He can really mix well with the people.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's very well liked. Although we've all seen, these studies have had an up and down pattern to them. This is the best it's been, but they've been up and down over the years. Like I said, they've been doing this survey since 2009. I think it's pretty clear that the public feels that they take a forgive yes, forget never, though, approach to this.
So response times improving, but not necessarily where they
right.
should be.
I think that was a big part of it. There was so much talk about the response time, and then as soon as the police department addressed it, and it's not where they want it to be, but it's taken a big step that direction. These are all things that are going to help over time. But response times, a lot of people in this latest survey were complaining about that still. That wasn't always a positive thing.
Right.
And look, when the burglars are breaking down your door, I mean,
every second
I was
counts
going to
to
say,
you.
2 minutes might not be good for you.
Right. Yesterday is not soon enough. So,
Right.
Okay, thanks a lot, Curt. And hopefully the NOPD will continue to get this increased satisfaction, and for good reason. Let's go over to Jeremy right now. And yes, we are in a U.S. Senate race, as quiet as it sometimes seems.
It kind of snuck up on me. I'm not going to lie. Even though we've sat here many of Fridays saying, no, nobody's paying attention, it did. I mean, we have, roughly 24 days left between now and that election. Early voting starts in just over a week on October 25th. But I guess, we did have a political milestone this week, and that registration ended on Tuesday. In a state like Louisiana, where 85% of the state is eligible voters are registered, they're not expecting a big spike. They probably will see, for the calendar year to date, an increase in Republican registration, because a lot of folks wanted to vote in the presidential primary. Ted Cruz's campaign spent a lot of money here. A lot of folks wanted to get involved for Donald Trump and get inside that primary, which was a closed primary. But maybe a small increase in the youth vote. We'll know in a couple of weeks exactly how many people were registered for the November 8th election. But the big winner in Louisiana for the registration drive is Facebook. Facebook, if you're on that social media outlet, they did this special drive to get people registered to vote, and local election officials tell me that they saw spikes of thousands of people registering to vote when Facebook made those appeals on social media.
Now the key is to get people out to vote.
And that's where
What are the Senate candidates doing to do that?
That's when the focus turns, and the focus is now turned to GOTV, get out the vote. It's the only thing that matters now is making sure people show up, because these candidates still are kind of all bunched up, and it's a 5-person race. You got Carolyn Fayard and Foster Campbell on the Democratic side, and the Republicans, you got John Kennedy, John Fleming, and Charles Bustani. They're all bunched up in the polls. The numbers keep moving, so getting people out to vote is going to matter. We're seeing a lot of different things. John Fleming up in Shreveport probably got a little bit of a jump start on the grassroots level. He got groups like Americans for Prosperity, Louisiana Family Forum, got their volunteer folks to come work for him, and then they built a new volunteer group. Charles Bustani is putting a lot of money into data collection. He's putting an emphasis on micro-targeting. They're doing 40,000 calls a week from their own phone banks across the state. And then you have Foster Campbell here in New Orleans, who's really trying to re-energize the old alphabet groups, and their strategists are just hell-bent on proving that can still be an effective turnout mechanism for Democrats. But everybody's going to have it. But the big change this cycle is that the national Democrats, national Republicans are not playing in this race in the primary. There's no presidential presence to piggyback on. The state parties are divided with so many heavyweights. So the candidates, for the first time in a federal cycle like this, are on their own by themselves for turnout on primary day.
Are they going to debate again?
They are going to debate Tuesday evening at Ruston live on Louisiana Public Broadcasting. I'm not sure where it's broadcasting here locally.
Chairman, with all the problems that the Trump campaign has been having lately, do you think that there are many people, kind of like rock-hard Republicans who always vote Republicans, who won't be there for Trump this time, who either won't vote or will vote Clinton?
Yeah, I think these last couple of weeks have shook some people off of Trump. However, they're still expecting a pretty healthy win in Louisiana. And so much so that we're not seeing Clinton or Trump folks at huge levels in Louisiana. They're here, they're present, they're doing things, but it's not enough for other candidates to piggyback on.
You mentioned early voting starting
October 25th, and there's
a week after next.
And there's an extra week of early voting this year, which makes it more expensive for the campaigns, but better opportunity for the rest of us to make sure you go vote.
So the campaigns are really going to focus on that too. Early voting has really gotten to be a very important push.
And I guess the last other thing about get out the vote, 65 precincts have been relocated because of the flooding in August. 65,000 voters affected. So that's going to be a key element for the parties and campaigns to find those people and make sure they know where to go.
Okay. We'll keep track with that. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. Over to Dawn now. And since the storm, we've seen an empty, big charity hospital, and different ideas have been floated around about what should we do with charity. Well, what's the latest?
The latest is charity is much the same as it was 11 years ago after Katrina rolled through. But that should all change. Starting next week, state officials expect to announce the winning bidder of a large bid to clean out Charity Hospital. And by clean out, it's everything that's not fixed or nailed into a floor or wall. So cabinets and CAT scan machines aren't moving, but desks, chairs, X-ray equipment that's portable, all of that will be moved out. They say that will give them a much better sense, kind of, if you're selling a home, sometimes you want it staged with furniture, sometimes you want nothing in it, so you can get a better sense of what the condition of the building really is. This job was expected to cost $10 million for the state. The bids have come in anywhere between $6.3 million and $9.5 million. So the bids came in lower, which is good. FEMA is going to pay for it all. This money came in very late from FEMA. It's expected to take 180 days for this clean out. The work should start in about 30 to 45 days after the winning bidder is announced. That winning bidder will be announced on or before October 20th, which is next Thursday. Mm-hmm. So there should be finally, this many years after the storm, some progress at Charity Hospital. That clean out work should be wrapped up, depending on when it officially starts, end of April or early May. The next step then could potentially be a secondary clean out, depending on how it looks once all of that is cleaned out, because all those fixed things will still be in there, the cabinetry, the big CT machines, that sort of thing. But they're hopeful that after this clean out phase, the state can then put out an RFP or a request for proposals for a consultant. And that consultant would help them then market the property and figure out how to put together another series of RFPs for developers. And I don't know if you may remember, but last summer in 2015, there were 5 developers on the table for Charity Hospital and redeveloping Charity Hospital. And then when Governor Edwards was sworn in, they scrapped all 5 of those plans and said, we're not really sure what this building's worth. Of those 5 plans, 4 of them call for leasing from the state. 1 calls for buying outright. The building may be worth more than we're seeing. We want to revalue the property. So this is all part of that order to revalue the property and make sure the state's getting the best bang for its buck on Charity Hospital.
And for a while, New Orleans, I mean, Mayor Landrieu was talking about moving City Hall over there, maybe some civil courts there, but that's gone.
That's gone. This will be some way to completely redevelop the hospital. We should know more on that early summer of 2017.
But doesn't it seem there's only one thing that makes sense, and that's some sort of multi-purpose facility?
It's too
There'll be a
big
combination
to be anything else.
Be a combination of offices and condos and maybe hotel. I mean, it's going to be something that's going to be multi-purpose.
Yes, that every bid that came in last summer, that's what it looked to: apartments and retail and offices, and all mixed in together. We'll see. I mean, really, it's going to be a blank canvas for what developers will do and what they're willing to pay, and we won't know that until they get a good look at the building. And the building, I'm told, does not have reliable electricity, does not have reliable elevators, does not have safe interior stairwells anymore. So the contractor who's coming in to clean it out, there were 8 people who picked up the paperwork for this bid process. Only 4 bids came in of those 8 people. They'll have to build exterior elevators and slide shafts to get stuff out of the building. So it might be one of those that's kind of fun to see and process, big things coming down the chute. Everything that's in there has to be scrapped.
I was going to ask you that.
Because there may be some asbestos, nothing, desks,
it'll
chairs, it'll all be
Everything
junked, sold for scrap.
Okay, but
or thrown out.
The intent so far is to keep that building, as expensive as it will be.
Keep the
to
building.
adapt it for reuse.
Yes.
Charity will stay.
Keep the bones and rebuild the inside.
I think there'd be community outrage to tear down that building.
Yeah.
There is no
It's
talk
still-
of tearing it down. There's talk
It's
of
still an
such an-
architecturally and historically significant
It's
building.
an iconic building.
keep
yeah,
the
no doubt
building
about that.
safe, and that's what part of the plan says. You have to keep the building intact and do all this work at the same
Okay.
time.
All right, Dawn. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Over to Curt now, and boy, there was some controversy and consternation involved over a football game because it was not going to be played, and now it looks like it will be
Well,
played.
yeah, we thought that maybe Mike the Tiger's death would be the big news out
Which
of
is sad.
Baton Rouge, but you know what? There may be a story that's even bigger, and it's this whole fight over the Florida LSU game. And it turns out the game is going to be played November the 19th, but it's going to be in Baton Rouge, not in Gainesville. It was postponed last weekend because of the hurricane. I think going into the weekend, we knew that there was a possibility that the storm was going to impact this game. And you'll recall last year, South Carolina came here on pretty short notice and played a game. So I think we're all thinking, okay, let's just play the game here. Well, there was some jockeying and some proposals, and each schools were talking about maybe neutral sites, or there are all kinds of proposals flying around. In fact, if you ask each side what the other side was proposing, apparently they disagree on what the other side even wanted. So it was quite a fight as to what to do with this football game. Florida was set to play Presbyterian. LSU was going to play South Alabama. Those smaller schools take these games because they can make a lot of money. The buyout, $500K for Presbyterian, $1.5 million for Alabama. And bottom line for Florida is they lose 2 home games this year.
So these teams were set to play, these 2 teams, the smaller teams, the bigger teams, on that new November, 19th date? Is that
It's the November the 19th,
the
yes.
19th? And so they each, these smaller teams received how much?
Well, it was a $500,000 buyout for Presbyterian, $1.5 million buyout for South Alabama. And besides the fact that it's a great opportunity for these smaller schools to play big teams, and if they would win, and it happens sometimes, boy, they're all over SportsCenter. It's a big deal. But also, the money that they get from these games is a huge part of the operating budget for their sports departments, for their athletic departments. So it was kind of a bad
Even
weekend.
though their players may be all quartered off the field.
Right. There'll be money for the medical expenses, don't worry. No, but it was a bad weekend, as it turns out, for SEC games anyway. So many of the SEC schools on the 19th were playing out-of-conference smaller teams. So now, if you're a football fan, this is great for you because it's going to make a better game that weekend, at least for the SEC.
So will these teams still play, Errol? Did you hear that maybe they'd be playing one another?
There was speculation that Presbyterian, I didn't even know Presbyterian existed as a school, in Southern Alabama might play each other that weekend.
That was, I think, what everybody that'd be the feel-good game of the year, wouldn't it?
They got to decide where to play it, though, first.
Right.
I mean, Southern Alabama already has $1.5 million without doing anything. So,
right.
So throw in an extra game.
But I really think it is just right now, just kind of a fun discussion to have. What is interesting is apparently the LSU-Florida game is going to be in Gainesville for the next 2 years. Because they're going to have to play LSU on the road this year, and the game that was going to be played there is going to be on the road. So they lose 2 home games this year.
Okay, so
Let me just mention that right now there's somebody saying, well, that's where all our tax dollars going, paying out Southern Alabama. But there's a separate foundation, the Tiger Athletic Foundation, which is privately funded that deals with these kind of things, and as well as the coach's salary and that sort of thing.
So the team's not playing these smaller, Florida and LSU not playing these smaller colleges. That doesn't impact any sort of national championship standing or anything.
Well, I don't think that they're in the hunt right now for any kind of national championship, Florida or LSU. But I'll tell you this, it could come down to where their standings are in the conference, certainly, at the end of the season.
The bowl game they get into.
Right.
Time to look ahead.
Also on the November ballot will be 6 constitutional amendments, of which probably the most important, at least to university people, is one that in effect would allow state universities to set tuitions without having to go through the legislature, giving them the badly needed flexibility that they've always wanted.
Okay. Jeremy?
Monday, we will see a court battle with representatives from the governor's office versus representatives from the attorney general's office over this contract provision on sexual orientation and sexual gender. It could set a precedent for the way the rest of the term is going to go. Should be some nice courtroom drama.
And that's Monday?
Monday.
Done.
Next Friday is the maiden voyage from the French-American River Cruises line going out of Gretna up the Mississippi River. This is revitalizing the Gretna Ferry Terminal to eventually bring back the Gretna Ferry as well. But the new cruise boat takes off next weekend.
All right, great.
Creepy clowns are causing problems in the New Orleans area, around the country. The one day that you can wear one of the masks is Halloween, right? But it turns out the good clowns are starting to fight back. In fact, I interviewed one this week on the West Bank who is trying to make an appeal telling everybody not all clowns are creepy. We've got the story on our website, WGNO.com.
Okay, we'll go look at that and hear their side of the argument. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you all for being with us, and we want to see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.